Today we're going to show you how to install our 5-axis trunnion onto the Haas VM-2 table. First thing we need to do is remove all the vices and the table probe. Just cleaning the bottom of the vise off while it's still wet with coolant, because it's a lot easier to do it at that time than after that coolant dries on there. The OTS table probe, which is what we use for setting our tool length offsets and tool diameter offsets, is not difficult to remove, but there's 4 set screws at 90 degrees apart all the way around, and that's what holds this probe onto its base. You loosen those 4 set screws, and then there's also 2 set screws right here, and they're just on a pin, and all they do is align the platter or the probe platter so that it's somewhat parallel with the x-axis. You have a 1/2-13 socket head cap screw that holds the base of the table probe to the machine table. There's 2 pinholes that align our trunnion plate, and the pinholes are labeled with the stamping trunnion. You have to remove this cap screw that does nothing but protect that hole. The other one's right here says trunnion. Once you remove the red cap, blast the chips out of the hole. Make sure you clean all the chips off the table before you do any installation. You need to stone the surface of this table to make sure there's no dings or nicks that sit up higher than the rest of the table. So we're going to spray that with a little WD-40. And then we're just going to rub a stone across there in circular motion, knocking off all the high points. After I wipe it down with a rag, I wipe the table with my bare hand, because these rags and most rags leave lint or pieces of cloth behind, and we don't want that between our fixturing. Before I install the plate also, I'm going to give a table surface a light coating of LPS number 3. Whenever we hook the trunnion up, there's 2 very, very important things that we always need to remember to do first. Before we lift this guy up in the air, and before we hook any of our power cables up to the Haas, the first thing we need to do is make sure our air line is hooked up. You never lift the trunnion with the lifting chains until your air line's hooked up. Your air line applies the brake in both the 4th and 5th axis. You never hook up the power supply without turning off the power at the back of the machine. Shut it down, hit E-stop, kill the power there, go to the back of the machine, kill the power at the back of the machine. The easiest way to get the trunnion into the machine itself, before you ever hook up the lift, run your power cables and air line inside the machine and out the porthole at the back right corner. Then hook up your air line and power cables before you ever hook up your lift. The air line hookup for the trunnion is up on top of the machine right here. Simply plug your air line in there like so. You'll need to remove the protective dust covers from the ports where your power lines connect to. There's 2 ports for each axis on the trunnion. One is for tilt, one is for rotary. Power cables are labeled accordingly: B rotary, A tilt. Once we have our power cables and air lines hooked up, we can turn our power back on. This here's one of the 2 pinholes that's going to locate our trunnion plate to the table of our Haas. The other one's located on the far side over here. Power's turned on at the back. We can start our machine once again. E-stop should still be on until it gets booted up. First, we want to go and enable the settings and parameters that allow the control to work with the 4th and 5th axis on the trunnion. There's 3 settings and parameters that we need to change to do that. So we hit the setting button and we hit enter. The first one we're going to change is setting number 7, and that's parameter lock. Type in 7 and hit the up or down cursor button to take you to that setting. By hitting the right or left arrow key, we can turn that parameter on or off. We want to turn it off, then hit enter. Type in setting 30 or just the number 30 and hit the down or up button to take you to that parameter. And by hitting the right or left cursor button, we can cursor through the different models that are available. Cursor until you find that one there, TR160 TLT. Hit enter. If you type in 78 and the down button, it'll take you to the parameter that controls the 5th axis. Cursor left or right to go to TR160 ROT and hit enter. Once you have both setting 30 and 78 set to the proper model, type in 7 and the up or down cursor key to go back to the parameter lock button. Hit the right or left arrow button to turn it on and enter to lock it in. You have to make sure that your chains tighten up equally all the way around, or otherwise the trunnion won't be balanced when you pick it up in the air. We need to align the pinhole and the trunnion base plate to the pinhole in the machine table. So we're going to slide the trunnion until it's lined up over that hole. And before we put the pin in, we're going to give the pin a shot of WD-40. Be very sure to install the pin with the tapped hole facing up so that we can remove it later. Do a couple gentle taps with a soft pound to make sure you're seated in there. Once your hole's aligned on the left side of the plate with the hole in the table, make sure you install your pin correctly with the tapped hole facing up. There's 4 locations for our hold down clamps. Put your T-slot nuts under those locations on both the front and the back of the machine. Be sure to install your 1/2-13 hold down bolts. These are what hold the trunnion securely onto the table. Be sure to remove all 4 lifting rings. Once your trunnion is mounted on the table and bolted down securely, we can home the machine. Release your e-stop, hit reset until all your alarms clear, close your doors, and hit the power up button. This will home your X, Y, Z, A, and B axes. We need to mount our OTS table probe, and it needs to be mounted up higher so that we don't collide with the top of the trunnion. So that's what we have this pedestal for. Drop that into the hole on the far right corner of the machine. Spin it down tight. Use a big crescent wrench to lock it in place. Then the base of our OTS table probe goes on next. We want to make sure we mount that with the little pedestal on the base of that OTS table probe towards the back of the machine. Drop your 1/2-13 socket head cap screw in there. Eyeball that pin so that it's kind of at the 12 o'clock position and lock it in place. Your OTS table probe slides over the base. Then you have 4 set screws located at 90 degrees all the way around that need to be tightened. And then snug up your 2 set screws that lock onto that alignment pin. Once these guys are tight, now you can go around and tighten the 4 set screws that lock your OTS table probe in position. Use a dial indicator to level the platter of the OTS table probe. Once you have the platter level, you're going to want to calibrate the table probe so the machine knows the location of it. And once you have that done, you're ready to use it.